Hello everyone and welcome to a new Symphony of the Night Developer's Diary, and in this video we're going to discuss a new sub-boss, the Creature. For my version of the game I want every level to have a sub-boss midway and also an end boss, and I've decided to move the Creature from where he was before. He was in the original, was in the inverted castle in the outer wall area where you fight the doppelganger in the first part of the castle area, but I've moved him here. I think he's quite suitable considering he's, you know, a creature maybe done by experiments, and in the alchemy lab I imagine that Dracula's doing all sorts of experiments, and plus he's quite an easy boss and is quite suitable for a level 2 sub boss. I've programmed it here so that the music turns off and the enemy doesn't react until you move a bit further to the right, and that's when the sub boss music will start. I noticed that in the Bloodstained game they had a special door so you knew when you was going to face a boss or not, and I understand why they did that. It gives you more time to prepare before going in to fight them, but I like that part of the original Symphony of the Night where you didn't know what was behind every door and you just nonchalantly walk into a certain door with maybe low health, the door shuts behind you, and then the music turns off and you know you're in trouble, especially if you haven't saved for a long time. So I wanted to put that into my game too, so you don't necessarily know where you're going to face the boss, but of course I'll probably do a save state, maybe an automatic save state just before. However, before we look at the Mega Drive version, let's first look at the original PlayStation version. One of the criticisms that people often have about Symphony of the Night is that it's too easy, especially some of the boss fights. Now here I'm not particularly overpowered, but he still goes down pretty easily. So he has this rolling attack and also this hammer attack here. Now something weird I noticed about this hammer attack is that for most of the animation the hammer doesn't have any kind of hitbox. So you can get really close and you're not going to get hurt. You just have to be careful if the hammer comes down, but you can actually get close and really well on him. Now this rolling attack here is a bit more difficult, but at this point in the game Alucard definitely has the double jump, so that makes it even easier to avoid. But of course in my version you just have the single jump at this point, which hopefully will make that attack a bit more challenging. You can normally defeat the boss a lot quicker than I'm doing here, but I just want the boss to display some different kinds of attacks, so I'm varying the distance and so on. So with the rolling attack you can actually get a few cheap shots in if you're careful, and I want to have that in my version too. But I think the hammer attack is especially quite weak because, as you can see here, I don't even need to be within the hammer range to attack him. I can stand back. My range is greater than his range, so I can just attack. And as long as I don't get too close to too far away, I don't think he's even going to try the rolling attack. So this fight could be even easier than what I've shown here. While I really like the design of this boss, he is a little bit too easy, especially for an inverted castle boss. But I think that with a few little changes he'll be very suitable for a level 2 mid boss in my game. The first step as always is to get the assets from the original game and convert them so that they can be used in the Mega Drive. Luckily someone had already ripped these and placed them online, but of course the actual animations themselves, the individual frames, had to be put into a sprite sheet where they're all matched up, and that took quite a long time. Plus unfortunately in this case they were missing some vital animations, particularly the rolling animation. So what I had to do is I had to go into DuckStation, then play it in a mode where a game moves by frame, and then take a screenshot of each individual frame of the rolling animation, and then had to put that into my game. One particularly tricky part of this process is to differentiate the sprite from the background, so I want to remove the background without affecting the sprite. Now thankfully I've created a little technique for this where I just use a sprite, create an index palette of the picture, and then bit by bit just replace the background colors very carefully to make sure I don't affect the sprite, and replace them with this transparent color. If anyone's interested, then I can do a more detailed tutorial of this at some point in the future, but this is the basic technique that you're seeing on the screen now. Although doing it this way is much quicker than it would be to carefully draw around every single sprite in every single frame, it still does take a while, so it's a really good time to put on your favourite music or a podcast you like and just kind of enjoy the mindless task as you concentrate on the music or podcast or whatever. And with the text out of the way, we now have the sprite without the background. Fortunately in this case the number of colours in the sprite are quite low, just 15, so that will fit the Mega Drive fine, although I did notice that some of the other animations had an extra colour or two, so it still did require a little bit of work to fit it into the Mega Drive. And of course the colours themselves have to be changed so they match the Mega Drive palette, because the Mega Drive doesn't have all the colours available that in the master palette that the PlayStation does. Of course, it's not just the graphics that need to be ripped from the original, the sound effects do too. And to do this I use Audacity, so I play the game without the CD music track and play the game and try as best I can to capture the sounds without any other interfering sound effects. For example, you don't want the noise of Alucard attacking or getting hurt getting mixed up with any of the the cries or the grunts of the boss. And again, for anyone interested, I'll eventually do a tutorial on this subject, go into more detail about how to do this. With all that work done, of course the next step is actually program it into the game, and for me this is where the fun really starts, is interesting to do the AI for enemies, although as you can see here there's always some bugs or any unexpected behaviours, but that's all part of the fun too, and it can even help inspire some potentially alternative attacks, because after all the original only has the 2 attacks, but maybe I can include this one. Okay, so now I'm going to be quiet for a minute or two, just let you take in the music and the sound effects and just have a look at the enemy behaviour too, so enjoy and I'll be back in a moment. The music in that, by the way, is by Alianna, and he's also done the music for the Festival of Servants track, so both parts of the boss music are by him, so you'll be hearing his tracks quite a lot throughout the game. When it comes to the enemy AI, I want to make sure that there's no place to hide, so just say you saw if I try to hide in the corner I could still get hit by the rolling attack, and that happens both in the left and right hand side. You can see here that jumping over is a little bit more tricky because I don't have the double jump, but it's still possible. And the hammer, you have to be a bit more careful because the hammer has a hitbox all the way through, even when it's just in front of him, so that's a bit more tricky to avoid. So you really, and plus I've made it so that the hitboxes don't quite match, so you can't just hit him from a distance, you have to get a bit close, so you probably have to take the risk and you have to move forward once he raises the hammer in order to get a hit on him if you want to hit him that way. So there's a kind of a risk reward thing going on, so you can't just keep hitting him from a distance as you could in the original game. Just as in the original though, you can still get some cheap shots while he's running so long as you time it right, but the hammer's definitely a more dangerous attack now than it once was. I've also included just enough randomness in the enemy decision making code to make it interesting while still making it predictable enough so that the player knows what's probably going to come. So for example, if you're very close to the enemy, I think there's a 3 in 4 chance that he's going to do the hammer attack, but there's also a 1 in 4 chance that he'll do the rolling attack instead, so you have to be on your toes and be careful. The colours for the current enemy sprite that you're seeing here were done by myself, and I think it doesn't look too bad, but I will send it to Pyron, so he might want to make some changes in the future, so you might see a slightly different sprite at some point in the future. And speaking of the hammer attack being dangerous, you can see it just killed me there, and once I die you can see one of the death effects that I'm currently experimenting with. And just for fun, here are the 2 versions side by side, the original on the left and my version on the right, and as you can see there are a few changes I can probably make, so I think I might make the rolling animation move a bit faster and that will match the PlayStation original, and also maybe when he strikes the hammer too in the PlayStation 1 this screen kind of vibrates a bit and I can add that into my version with no problem. It gives the hammer a bit more strength, it makes it look like a more powerful attack, so I think that would be nice to add. But as I said throughout the video, I'm not going for an exact match, I think there's some changes I can make, and after all I'm not looking at the original code, I'm just creating the code entirely by scratch myself, so it'll be very difficult to have it exactly the same anyway. But I think it's looking good so far, and with each of these enemies and levels and bosses and so on, these are just first drafts, and I'll no doubt go back to everything and tweak it here and there before the project is finally finished at some point way into the future. But I think for now it's looking pretty good, and I'm looking forward to everyone being able to play that in the upcoming Christmas demo. Okay, so that's about it for this video. As always, thanks very much for watching, and if you're interested in this type of content, don't forget to subscribe.
I'm interested in this.
And for those of you who wish to support the channel, I have a Patreon and any support is much appreciated.
You won't go unrewarded.
Until next time,
Farewell.